Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you. That doesn't seem quite right. Let's try that again. Cowabunga dudes! Thanks for joining me on this rad journey here. We're going to be opening up this new magic deck. I don't exactly know what that means, but we're totally going to have an awesome time here. And if you know what I mean, it's turtles. Who else could be saying cowabunga in this day and age? We've even got some slime going down. Is this Nickelodeon? It actually technically is Nickelodeon, but we've got some shattered vials here. But yeah, we're going to be going into the surfer talk, and you're going to be helping me ride some gnarly waves, and I guess some other sort of rides. What is it, like skateboard, scooter? What have we there? But yeah, we've got the new set coming out here. It's starting off with some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Heroes and the Half Shell Turtle Power. We've got some of the pixel art here, and I guess of Splinter there, and of the magic symbol, which I guess these are all special treatments for the main turtles that you can get probably in the collector packs. We're doing this one early before all of the collector packs because I've actually been having trouble getting my boxes, and I'm hoping to be able to get them soon here so that I can go through them. But we are going to try to get through here now. The big thing is this is going to be a 5-color deck here, but we're going to have a bunch of different of the turtles here. Now, it shows Leonardo here up front, which I wonder why they just have him and not the others, or why they don't have specifically the deck saying Leonardo leads. But I thought that there was a 5-color commander, so I'm surprised that they don't have the 5-color commander right here up at the front. We do have Leonardo the Balance instead, so I guess that's what we do. Like, sure, Leonardo is the leader, but I guess technically he does have 5 colors on him there. I wonder if the other turtles do as well. So I guess maybe that's why he's there. We'll have to see if the other ones do it, or if there is just a because I thought that there was one that had all of them as a singular card. Yeah, Heroes and a Half Shell, it's right there. But we're going to go through all of them. Maybe each of them has a 5-color ability, which can make them 5 colors, and that's why it's good. We'll have to see. So we'll first have here a little bit of Leonardo the Balance, 3 and a white for a 3/3 legendary Mutant Ninja Turtle. I wonder why those are certain types. Funny enough, all of those were types prior to this, so it kind of makes sense. Whenever a token you control ETBs, you may put a +1/+1 on each creature you control. Do this only once each turn. Okay, I mean, do a token strategy. You can do that. Now, it's once on each turn, not on solely your turn. So if you've got ways of maybe producing tokens on other players' turns, then that's potentially a way to do it. For one of each color, creatures you control gain menace, trample, and lifelink until end of turn. Right? Give them a lot of different abilities. If you pump them up with a lot of +1/+1 tokens, then, they should be relatively big for that trample effect. And partner character select, you can have 2 commanders if both have this ability. So this is going to be just going into that one there. I guess they're really delving deep into the Ninja Turtles arcade game, where I don't know if you could play with all 4, but you could definitely probably do at least 2 different characters at the same time. And, it makes sense with that character select, and also with the very, the pixel art that they had for the characters. It certainly would make a whole lot of sense. But yeah, that would make it 5 colors on that one. So that's one of our commanders that we could potentially have. And it looks like we also have a little bit of Donatello the Brains. 2 and a blue for a 2/4 legendary Mutant Ninja Turtle. Kind of makes sense that Leo is pretty balanced, and I mean, he's even called Leonardo the Balance. He's balanced stats, 3/3. Donatello being more Brains probably has that edge there of the, having the more toughness on him there, whereas probably Raphael, like when we eventually get to it, is probably going to have more physical stats, like his power is going to be larger than his toughness, likely. But if one or more tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus a mutagen token are created instead. Don't exactly know what a mutagen token is, so we'll have to find that out later on, but it looks like we're definitely going into some sort of token strategy, because it seems two of them have that, and this one also has the character select, so that is another possibility for one of our commanders. And going up for our black, we're going to actually have Splinter the Mentor, 1 and a black for a 2/2 legendary mutant ninja rat with menace. Again, rat being a type that we've had before, so it kind of makes sense that we're able to get in there. I mean, ninja rat, we can probably look at like throat splitter, ash coat. There's going to be more. It's just those are two that come to mind instantly. But menace, whenever Splinter or another non-token creature you control leaves the battlefield, you create a mutagen token. So more token generation. It's just when something leaves the battlefield this time, instead of getting more or whatnot there, but you get the token when something leaves. Raphael the Muscle actually has pretty balanced stats as well. A bit surprising there. 4 and a red for a 4/4 legendary mutant ninja turtle. Double all damage that creatures you control with counters on them would deal. When Raphael enters, create a mutagen token. So again, creating another mutagen, and he's got all of these have partner character select. Now the big thing about this one here is that double the damage of creatures with counters on them. Now, you can do that with +1/+1 counters, but also anything that has a -1/-1 counter on it deals double damage. Anything with a flying counter, any of the ability counters on it, a finality counter, a void counter, like there's just so many different things, charge counter, there's just so many different types of counters that, because this does not specifically say +1/+1s on it, this has a lot of usage for it. Now, it's not reciprocal, like your opponents can't use it because it does say only you control, but for being able to do the stuff, Raphael actually has quite a lot of power behind them. So if you're able to put him into a red deck there, I'm not sure how many red decks would specifically be creating a lot of counters on them, but that's quite a big potential on that one. Oop. Next up, we got Michelangelo the Heart, 1 and a green. So the cheapest of all of them to be able to play. I guess Splinter is tied for that. For a 2/1 legendary mutant ninja turtle with trample, and he has a raid, but it's raid the fridge because he likes huzzah. At the beginning of your second main phase, if you attack this turn, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature and create a food token. So creating more counters to be able to go with, ones that you need for Leonardo, creating more counters so that things can hit harder with Raphael, and then the tokens that we've seen in the other ones, and of course the character select there. And the last of the potential ones that we are able to use as commanders is this Heroes in a Half Shell, which is going to be one of each color for a 5/5 legendary mutant ninja turtle that's going to have vigilance, menace, trample, and haste. And whenever one or more mutants, ninjas, and or turtles you control deal combat damage to a player, you put a +1/+1 counter on each of those creatures and you draw a card. Okay, so anytime they would deal combat damage only to a player. So they need to connect with the player to be able to do it, as long as they connect with at least one player to a player. So the maximum that you can get is 3 +1/+1s and drawing a card. Is that correct? So only the ones that hit a player get a +1/+1, but they will never get more than one because it's only when they hit that particular player, but you have the potential of drawing 3 cards if you connect with 3 different players. Okay, so that's going to be how it works. So, yeah, getting more counters on them to deal more damage, to, get them ready for the Leonardo, but it doesn't have anything to do with the tokens that some of the other ones do. So that's the only difference between this one and all of the others, is this one doesn't do anything with tokens. I guess Raphael only makes one token, but doesn't really do anything else with tokens. So, that's also something. But they've given us a lot of choices here for our characters, our commanders. We can either have heroes in the half shell as a singular one, or we can have one of the two of each of these 5 here as potentials. Now, I did see that 42 of these cards in this deck are going to be brand new, which is very, very nice. Being able to have them there is always good, gives us a little bit more opportunity. We've already seen 6 of them, so we've still got 36 more to go through. But yeah, let's take a look to see of more of these video game references, because, here we go. Continue? Yes, that's obviously one there. 1 and a white, for an instant, choose up to 4 target creature cards in your graveyard that were put there from the battlefield this turn and return them to the battlefield. So someone does a board wipe effect and, you get rid of a whole bunch of your creatures. For 2 mana, you can bring back 4 of them. That's actually that's awesome for only 2 mana. Sure, it's very limited on when you could do it, and you need to hold up the mana to be able to play this, but to be able to bring back 4 things after a board wipe is pretty good. So for 2 mana, yeah, I think this is a very powerful card. Definitely used in non-token creature strategies where you want to get a whole lot of stuff, or if you want to potentially try to protect whatever engine that you have going if you're in white. That's a way to do it. Endless Foot Assault. 2 and a white for an enchantment with squad 1 and a white. As an additional cost to cast a spell, you can pay 1 and a white any number of times. When this ETBs, you create that many tokens that are copies of it. Whenever you attack for each opponent, create a 1/1 black ninja creature token that's tapped and attacking that player. So you could have one of these, and each turn that you are attacking for anything, you can just be attacking one player, and you create a 1/1 for each person. Now, if you pay it more, then you've got more 1/1s that are coming out there, but those are generating tokens, and unfortunately, Leonardo only works once each turn, but you could get a whole bunch of them. With Donatello, it does say if you create 1 or more tokens, you create that many plus a mutagen token, so you only create 1 more. Splinter only considers non-token creatures. If you have Leonardo out and you've put a bunch of +1/+1 counters on these guys, and you swing it and you have Raph out on the field, then you can get a whole bunch of those ones there. But you could potentially make them bigger with the heroes in the half shell if you connect with any of them, but they're still 1/1, so if you can put some extra mana into it, even if they get rid of things, they'd have to have mass enchantment removal if you've got a bunch of them, because every turn just swinging in with one guy, and you're generating 1 more for each player times the number of these that you've got. It is an endless assault. We're also getting a little bit of April O'Neil, Alive on the Scene. 1 and a blue for a 2/1 legendary human detective. I guess we're going back into the detectives that everybody absolutely loved. But this one also has partner character select, so you can have April O'Neil as one of your commanders with one of the turtles if you really wanted to. Whenever a mutant, ninja, or turtle you control ETBs, you investigate. Now, that does not say once a turn, so do it with the Endless Foot Assault here. And again, you attack in and you create 1 black ninja creature token. There, it means you get 3 clues. If you got multiple out on this field, you multiply that by the number that you create. That actually goes very well with that. Potentially thinking of if that would be good in a low-powered... what's the name of that one there that people don't like. The black and blue ninja Yuriko. That's it. I wonder if in a low-powered Yuriko that this would be good of, being able to put out some ninjas with ninjutsu or whatnot, and just being able to investigate so you can continuously draw if you're getting stumped out and you need to get some extra draw. Again, like if you're looking for the infinite combo that Yuriko players sometimes do, it's probably not going to be worth it for you. Baxter, Fly in the Ointment. I remember seeing some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle stuff when I was growing up. I do not remember a whole lot, so this is... I don't know what this is. I think it's supposed to be a parody, a little bit of Daredevil, but with like animals and whatnot. So like I have no idea who any of these characters are. Baxter, Fly in the Ointment, 3 and a blue for a 2/2 legendary insect mutant scientist. Whenever Baxter ETBs or attacks, each creature you control with a counter on it gains flying until end of turn, and whenever you draw a card, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Okay, so another one that goes very well with counters. Again, any of them that have +1/+1s on them, they get flying. Even if they got -1/-1s on them, they got flying. So there's a few different places that I could see that this one goes if you're looking for those +1/+1 counters or -1/-1s. Say you got something with Blight and you're like, oh, like it comes in with so many -1/-1 counters and you need to get in for a hit or something, then this makes it so that you can hit them, I guess. It gives them flying. Interesting. Here comes a new hero that looks like Donatello, but a little bit weird. X, 2 and a blue for a sorcery. Target player draws X cards. Create a token that's a copy of up to one target creature with mana value X or less. So you can create a copy of one creature and then draw cards equal to its mana value, essentially. I guess this is... The thing is, this is perfectly on rate for something that's mana value 2 or less. Because you draw X cards. If X is equal to 2, you're paying 5 mana for a 2 mana creature and 2 cards, with 2 being kind of that best rate of draw 2 for 3 mana. So if you make a slightly bigger creature like 3 or 4 mana, then the extra 3 just gets better. Copy of a 1 mana or a 0 mana creature. 0 is bad because then you just don't draw any cards, and you just paid 3 mana to create a copy of a 0 mana creature. It's big and it's flashy. I just don't personally see it doing a whole lot for me there. But I guess technically if you have like a big token, then that could be a potential of doing 0 on it to get a second one of that for 0. But I don't know. It's not my favorite one there. I do like me some card draw, but it's not my personal favorite. Irma, part-time mutant. Part-time mutant, so she's only a mutant part-time. How? 2 and a blue, 1/1 legendary human mutant shapeshifter. At the beginning of combat on your turn, Irma becomes a copy of up to one other target creature you control, except her name is Irma, part-time mutant, and she has this ability. Then put a +1/+1 counter on her. So slightly getting bigger and bigger and bigger, but you can make her any creature. So it's not going to be an ETB trigger, but if it's some sort of once a turn trigger, like let's say Leonardo's thing, then you can have it trigger multiple times, or if it's an attack trigger, you can get multiple of that, and then she just gets a little bit bigger. Okay, that's nice. Krang, the all-powerful, 4 and a blue for a 3/3 legendary artifact creature, Utrom robot. If a player drawing a card causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. And whenever a player draws their second card each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Krang. Oh, I very much like this card. Yes. Now I'm trying to think how this would, if this is effective enough to put into my Nekusar deck, because every time they draw a card, they lose a life, but that double triggers, and they lose 2 life, and there's multiple effects that do that. So it's a potential plus. In Nekusar, you're making them all draw 2 cards, so they draw 2 cards, you get a +1/+1 on this every single turn for each player. And then, you get something like Shieldred in there as well. They draw a card, they lose 2 life, and then double that to 4, and then whenever you draw your cards, you gain 2 life, so you're getting 4 instead. Yeah, Krang is, I think, it's slow, and it's susceptible, but it's powerful. Like, it's got potential. I don't think that it's going to be like a CEDH type of threat, but I do think that it can be a threat. Any of these ones that double trigger abilities like Veyron or Elish Norn, or the gods from the Caverns of Ixalan, like, they can be intense there. So I very much like Krang. Next up, we've got a little bit of Ray Fillet, Wave Warrior. Okay, 0/2 Legendary Fish Mutant with Flying and Evolve. So it reminds me of like Cloudfin Raptor, who is like a 0/1 with Evolve from the Simic Conclave. So, put in a creature with higher power or toughness, and this gets a +1/+1. Whenever a creature you control with a counter and it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Okay, so this very much goes in with this counter strategy, and yeah, that this can be intense with that. So yes, I very much enjoy this one as well. I did end up getting more than one of these commander decks there, because it was hard to find them not being sold singularly and not get a good deal. So having more of these is good. It's an option to put into like a Proliferate deck or the Tidus Precon deck, because that one's already putting out +1/+1 counters on it. And again, it says any type of counter. So you got the flying counter on something, or a menace, death touch counter, anything like that, you get something extra. Bebop, Skull and Crossbones, 1 and a black for a 2/1 legendary Boar Mutant. Partner with Rocksteady Mutant Marauder. When this ETBs, target player may put Rocksteady into their hand from their library and then shuffle. So yes, that is the thing. It's when it says partner with something, you're able to do that. But when it just says partner, or these partner character selects, that's when you can't search for them. But if this is in your deck, you can do that. But I think that if it has the partner with ability, then you can have both of them in your commander zone as well. Death Touch. Whenever Bebop deals combat damage to a player, you may draw X cards, where X is the number of counters on Bebop. If you do, you lose X life. Okay, so, you get some counters on him, and essentially is becoming like a Phyrexian Arena type effect, drawing a whole bunch of cards, but, because of that there, you're going to lose a lot of life. It's got Death Touch, so it might be easier to get in with it. Yeah, it seems decent there. Dimension X Pizzasaur. Okay, that's a little bit out there. 3 and a black for a 2/1 artifact creature, Food Alien Mutant. When this ETBs, you put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature, including itself. When you do destroy up to 1 target creature with mana value less than or equal to the number of counters among permanents you control. So potentially a good removal spell there, only on one creature. And it's got the food effect of pay 2, tap, sack it to gain 3 life. But also each opponent loses 3 life as well. Okay. Okay, I see what... That's actually a decent one there. If, it's ETB trigger, it's a one-time effect, so if you use it and you don't need it anymore, and then this isn't really doing anything for you, you can sack it and make everybody lose 3 life, and then you gain some. Seems like a pretty good trade-off there. Foot Chopper. Okay, so it looks like someone put a mini chopper onto a foot soldier's head or something. 1 in a black, artifact equipment. When this ETBs, you create a 1/1 black ninja creature token and attach this equipment to it. They have flying, and whenever a cryptid creature deals combat damage to a player, you may sack it. If you do, you draw cards equal to its power. Okay. Interesting, interesting. Now, if only there was a way... Because this does not provide any power or toughness to things. So something like if you were able to get this as well as a skull clamp attached to something, skull clamp's just going to give you the 2, but then potentially also giving you some extra. Because the skull clamp does increase the power by 1. The taking away one toughness, though, would kill this 1/1, and then you'd only get the 2 from skull clamp. But, it's a possibility of if you're creating more like 2/2 bear creature tokens. That could see it. It's with all of the counters that you're putting on things, I could see you doing that and having it as an upside, especially if you've got something like Leonardo the Balance, and then you get something like Endless Foot Assault out there where you're already making a bunch of guys and you're like, oh yes, like they're getting bigger there, and potentially sacking 1 a turn and getting 2, 3, 4 cards draw off of it there. They do have to deal combat damage, so you do have to get through somehow. Game over. Okay, so it's the first one that we've kind of had more of a the gaming theme to it. 3 in double black, sorcery, costs 2 less to cast if a player's life total is less than or equal to half their starting life total, and then destroy all creatures. So better if you're behind on things, then it's a 3 mana board wipe instead of a 5 mana board wipe. At 5, it's not the best, but still playable if you really need it. But if you're low on life, hey, it's a cheaper one there. I'll certainly take that. Also, Rat King Pale Piper, 3 and a black for a 3/3 legendary rat avatar. Interesting. Menace, whenever Rat King or another non-token creature you control leaves the battlefield, you create a 1/1 black creature token. Okay, so getting more creature tokens if a non-token has left the battlefield. You can pay 2 to sack a token to draw a card. That's also not that bad. Just being able to sack something like just a token for 2, essentially paying 2 mana to draw a card whenever you need to, especially if there's going to be an unfavorable trade, or you can attack in with something, and if they block it, if you've got a way to create a bunch of tokens, that's also a possibility. I like this. If it would be even better if it was only 1 mana. Obviously, they would never make it a 0 cost there. That would just be too powerful. But 2, as I think, is a balanced cost for it, because anything less than that, I think, would be too powerful. A 1/1 card generation is a bit too good for a rare, and then for free would be way too much. And we can't have a deck of Ninja Turtles without Shredder the Shadow Master. Oh, the Shredder. 3 and double black for a 5/5 legendary human ninja with whenever Shredder attacks a player. For each opponent, you create a token that's a copy of Shredder tapped and attacking that player, except that it isn't legendary, and you sack those tokens at the end of combat. Whenever Shredder deals combat damage to a player, that player loses half their life rounded up. Okay, so it has a built-in myriad cost and does the unstoppable assailant. I can't remember what it was called, but it was from Duskmourn, where if it did the same thing. If they dealt combat damage to a player, they lost half their life. So they have to choose. Do they want to lose half their life, or do they want to chump block with a creature that might not be beneficial for them? So, because it deals the 5 damage and then it halves their life total. So that could be bad there. Yep, 5 mana for it. Seems about fair. Yeah, okay. Next up, we've got a little bit of Swift Demise. It looks like we've got Shredder decimating the turtles there. 2 and a black, instant. Swift Demise deals 1 damage to target creature, then destroy each creature you don't control that was dealt damage this turn. Okay, so you just do a little bit of ping on one thing, and then each thing that took damage that you don't control goes away. So, if there's a way to just ping each creature for 1, then this is just a one-sided board wipe for 3 mana. Yeah, that's actually pretty intense. If you've got a way to do that, that's, like I said, that's intense. Next up, we got Casey Jones, the back alley brute, the guy that Raph meets at some point. So I guess he's got the stats that I was thinking Raph was going to have, the 4 and the 2. 3 in a red for a legendary human berserker with menace. And whenever Casey Jones attacks, you put a +1/+1 on target attacking creature. So token strategy good. Whenever you put 1 or more +1/+1 counters on a creature you control, Casey Jones deals that much damage to target opponent. So whenever you put a +1/+1 on something, it deals damage equal to the number of +1/+1s you put out. If you've got a wide board and you've got Leonardo out and you put a token in, then you put out on those counters, and then you're dealing a whole bunch of damage. That's a bit of a yikes. Yeah, these two are a bit of a problem together. I would have thought that these would have been a problem together, because, I mean, you can only put 1 +1/+1 counter on something, and then, you know, you're dealing double damage. Yeah, that's a bit of a yikes. Now, the thing that I just realized when I was looking at that with Raphael is I'm looking at this and it deals double all damage that creatures you control with counters on them would deal. Now, this includes, you know, damage that you deal to creatures and opponents. But the thing is, it does not say combat damage. This is not like double strike. This is just purely damage. So you've got one counter on Casey Jones, and then whenever that effect goes off of whenever 1 or more +1/+1s goes out, it doubles the damage that Casey Jones deals to target opponent, because it has a counter on it there. So you do something that it's a damage doubler. It's not a double striker. That's the big thing to be mindful of this. You know, it's not going to do the first strike damage, but it also works for non-combat damage as well. That's the big thing about it. So you got something like Torwaki the Younger, which you can just continuously be pinging off damage over and over and over again. If you've got 1 +1/+1 counter on it, and then you're dealing double that damage, that sounds nasty. I'm not going to lie, that sounds sick. All right, next up, we've got a little bit of Electric Seaweed. Now, I do know that this was the bane of people's existence in one of the video games there, like the NES game, that it was one of the things that people did not like in that underwater level. That was really difficult. I've never played it. I did not have an NES growing up, so I don't necessarily know. I'd like to maybe give it a try sometime, just because it's nice to give a difficult game a try and see how it is. I remember, you know, not being able to beat some games when I was growing up, when I was 5, 6, 7 years old, and I revisited them later on. I'm like, man, now that I've got better reading comprehension and better problem-solving skills, I can actually figure these out. So Electric Seaweed, 2 and double red for an 0/4 plant wall creature with Defender and Haste. Whenever this creature ETBs until end of turn, whenever another creature dies, this deals 1 damage to each non-wall creature. Okay, interesting. So only when it ETBs, and you can tap this, and this creature deals 1 damage to any target. So you can try to pick off something for 1 damage, then this deals 1 damage to each non-wall creature. So potential to try to be a board wipe with a creature, kind of trying to almost be like a massacre girl, but instead of using the like a -1/-1, you're just trying to deal damage. So it doesn't get around indestructible, but it does potentially get around hexproof, ward, and all of that, because if you can just ping one thing that has only 1 toughness, then you can kill everything else. And if at least one other thing has 1 toughness, then it hits, then that one dies, and another wave goes out, so a total of 2, and if at least one thing has 2, then it deals 1 more, and, keeps on going on until try to get everything out. Yeah, I could see this being a neat little removal piece if you wanted to try to do something that wasn't like blasphemous act or just pure creature destroying. It's an interesting one. I don't think it's necessarily the greatest one, but I think it's a very interesting one, and I'd give it a try. All right, next up we've got a little bit of fast forward. 4 and a red for a sorcery. This costs 1 less to cast for each opponent you attacked this turn. So pay 5 outright in main phase 1, but if you've attacked each of your opponents and use it in the main phase 2, it costs 3 less, so it's only 2, and you goad all creatures your opponents control. Goading all creatures is a very, very good effect, I think, because if your opponent doesn't have a way to tap down creatures that are valuable, then they have to attack in with them and make them vulnerable, and then be essentially, vulnerable to attacks themselves, because everything that they have, except for anything that they played after their battle phase or anything with summoning sickness, would be useless. Yeah, I really like this one. A nice little goad effect. Goad everything on your opponents for only 2. I dig it. Give them a little shell shock. X and a red for an instant. For each opponent, choose up to 1 target creature that player controls. This deals X damage to each of those creatures, and then you create a mutagen token for each creature dealt damage this way. So potential of getting, 3 of these mutagen counters, which I see it's going to explain there, but dealing X damage to 3 things, honestly, that's a pretty good rate. I mean, for just 2 mana, you're dealing 1 damage to 3 creatures. It's a pretty good rate. I mean, once you start getting to X being 2, so you pay 3 mana to deal 6 damage in total, and then at 4, so 3X, you're dealing 9 damage among 3 different creatures, and then, getting the mutagens. Yeah. So mutagens are artifacts with pay 1 and tap, sack the token, and you put a +1/+1 on target creature. Okay, so we haven't had that one yet, so I can see why that would be good with Raphael, because, you create a mutagen token and then you boost something up with a counter on it. For Donatello, I mean, being able to create that to try to give a +1/+1 to help something like Raphael or something, any of these other guys. Yeah, I think that this is a very good damage/removal spell for that, because, you get the 3 mutagen tokens on top of all of the damage that you deal, and the damage is at a good rate. Because if you think about it there, it would be, if you paid 4 mana for this, Lightning Bolt is 1 red for 3 damage. So this would be 4 mana. So let's say the 3, that's the X. Each of those are the lightning bolts that you deal. So you deal 3 lightning bolts, and then for 1 red mana after that, you get 3 mutagen tokens, which potentially gives 3+1/+1 tokens. I think that's a very good rate. Now, again, it's not as cheap as just playing one lightning bolt and then going around and potentially playing one more lightning bolt, but as a way to get a bunch of mutagen tokens, as a way to just deal some damage to something that each player has, yeah, I think that it can do well. Special move, 2 and a red for an instant. Choose 2. Okay, jump kick, destroy target artifact. Okay, we like that. Dash attack, put 2+1/+1 counters on target attacking or blocking creature you control, so a combat trick. And foot toss, target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to any other target, and then you sacrifice it. Okay, so, yeah, I mean, definitely the destroying an artifact is probably will be the preferred mode on this. And then it just comes down to what's going to be best. If the 2+1/+1s are going to help get past something, or, you know, it doesn't have it originally and you put it on with Raphael, then, you know, it's going to deal the double damage. Potentially even, you know, putting the double damage, the 2+1/+1s on the attacking or blocking creature that might not have been able to make it through or isn't going to make a favorable trade anyway, and then sacking it there with the Raphael, it's still going to deal the double damage to an opponent or the creature there. Yeah, you know, it's got its potential there. I think that all of the different modes are good, especially if you've got Raphael out on the field. I mean, it makes sense. He's the one in the artwork there. But with him out on the field, I think that this does a lot more. All right. Tempestra, Dame of the Games. 1 and a red for a 1/3 legendary creature, Elemental Illusion. 2 and a red for tapping to sack an artifact, create a token that's a copy of another target creature you control, except it isn't legendary. It gains haste, sack at the beginning of the next end step. So you're getting a lot of mutagen tokens with this. You could be getting clues, treasures, whatever you want, or just, you know, artifacts that you want to sack anyway. And to be able to make a copy of something, again, you know, you make a copy of Leonardo and you get its double +1/+1 trigger to go off, or you get another Donatello and you get the tokens come out and you get more mutagen tokens so that you can then fuel this faster, or, you know, you get 2 Raphaels so you quadruple all damage that are dealt with +1/+1 tokens. You know, there's a lot of these has a lot of potential with it, and just for the cost of 3 mana and sacking an artifact for that, and I mean, you get to tap this as well, but that's not too bad. Again, it's not the fastest thing ever, but again, double triggers on certain creatures is pretty darn good. So I'm not going to let this go under my radar, because this could go in a whole lot of things. I'm just trying to think, like, yeah, there's a couple of things that I can think of, like a few of my decks that have red in them where getting those double triggers. Again, you put this into some, and the artifact that you sack doesn't have to be untapped or anything, so again, could put this into something like Nekusar, and you're like, oh, you know, like, I want to get that double trigger there, because it goes untap, upkeep, and then draw, and the ability is draw an additional card. So let's say, you know, you do your untap and you get all of your mana back there, and you create another Nekusar at the beginning of your turn before you draw, and then you get to draw an extra card, so you get to draw 3 at the beginning of your turn, and then if you have some sort of wheel effect that's going to make people draw, you know, 7 new cards, well, now they're going to be taking, you know, 14 damage instead of the 7. I mean, there's a lot of other creatures that can do stuff there, but if you don't necessarily have one there, you know, this is a way to potentially do it, or just any sort of thing, getting the double triggers, like the double Torwaki trigger there. You know, again, that's another thing that would be very, very impactful. So I think that it's cheap because it's only 2, and then it's 3 to activate its effect. You just need an artifact. I think that it can be pretty darn good. Token and Razar, unsupervised, 2 and a red for a 3/3 legendary turtle wolf mutant with first strike. Whenever another non-token creature you control leaves the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on Token and Razar and create a treasure. It only triggers once each turn. Again, it's very similar to Splinter of it needing to be another non-token creature, but, you know, getting a mutagen token, getting a +1/+1 on this, getting the treasure for each one there. The treasure can activate the mutagen if you really, really wanted to. Yeah, you know, I could see that all working together. Now I'm trying to remember, I think that there was some sort of legend that if an artifact left the battlefield, just on the battlefield, that it dealt damage to each opponent. I'll have to see what that one is. But again, if you had both Splinter and Toka and Razar out there, then, you know, you're sacking the treasure to activate the mutagen token. That's 2 artifacts that are leaving the battlefield. You know, it could have a little bit of synergy there. Another video game reference here. We're getting a little bit of high score. 2 and a green for an enchantment. If 1 or more +1/+1 counters would be put on a creature you control, you put that many +1. You put that many +1/+1/+1 counters are put on it instead. So very similar to Hardened Scales, but at the beginning of your end step, draw a card if you control a creature with the greatest power among creatures on the battlefield. I'll have to see how much like Hardened Scales costs us if Hardened Scales is 1 in a red. Because this just outperforms Hardened Scales. Because you're going to be you're in a +1/+1 counter deck. You're going to get more. And just for having this out on the battlefield, you get to draw basically an extra card at the end of your turn there. You basically have the Monarch, but it can't be transferred there very easily. So yeah, this is a very, very good card. And again, I'm glad that I got multiple of these decks so that I could put that in there if I really wanted to. Leatherhead, Iron Gator, expensive 5 and double green for a 5/5 legendary crocodile mutant rogue with trample and haste. Whenever this attacks, you put 2 +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. Yeah, that's certainly why. Putting 2 +1/+1 counters on everything is a lot, especially if you've got high score. Then you're putting 3 +1/+1s on all of your stuff. You get a token out with Leonardo, and you're putting out 2 more on all of that, on all of those things. You get what was the one that we just saw that we thought could break stuff? Tempestra. You get Tempestra. You make a copy of this. You have, you know, both of them attack, and you're getting 4 +1/+1s on each thing that's attacking. Yeah, you know, like there's quite a lot that you can do with this. It's expensive. It's expensive, but it's basically an overrun or Craterhoof Behemoth effect there. They're not going to get trample, but they're going to get very, very large, and the counters don't go away. So you can just, they don't die on the first one there and they don't have a way to remove things, well, you're going to attack in heavy again, and they're just going to be bigger. Yeah, if that wasn't that expensive, that would be broken. Level Up. 1 and a green for an enchantment aura, enchant creature. When this ETBs, you put a +1/+1 counter on enchanted creature, and so helps out with a lot of these things here, especially Raphael. Whenever enchanted creature has, whenever this creature attacks, double the number of +1/+1 counters on it. Then if it has power 10 or greater, you draw a card. Okay. Yeah, you know, Ouroboros type of deal here of doubling the counters and whatnot. And okay, yeah, it's going to be easy to get to that 10 with if you've got a deck that's dedicated to counters on it. Because it's just Power Integrator, it's not having 10 +1/+1 counters on it. So, if you've got if a creature has 6 power and you got 2 counters on it, well, it's going to double up and it's going to be at 10. If it's, what is it? If it's 4 power and you got 3 +1/+1s on it, because this already puts 1 on it there. So if you've got a way to put 2 more, like, with our alligator friend here, Leatherhead, then yeah, it just instantly does it for you. Yeah, decent little one. It's cheap, so that makes it kind of worthwhile. Ninja Pizza, 2 and a green for an enchantment. With food you control, have tap to sack this artifact, and you add 1 mana of any color. I think that's pretty good there. Being able to use all of your foods as if they were treasure tokens is very good. At the beginning of your second main phase, you just create a food token, which, again, you can sacrifice for mana. Yeah. This is going to go hard in a lot of food decks there where, if you're creating a lot of food, then have this out, you're creating a lot of mana as well. So, yeah, I think that's going to be a very impactful card. Rocksteady, Mutant Marauder, 2 and a green for a 3/3 legendary Rhino Mutant, partner with Bebop, and it has Trample, and whenever another non-token creature you control ETBs, you put a +1/+1 on target creature. So it goes very well with, the Wrath strategy of having at least 1 +1/+1 on something, because you put another non-token creature in and you're just like, okay, I put a +1/+1 on it, now it's doubling its damage. Yep. Super combo. 1 in a green for a sorcery with Replicate 2. Whenever you cast a spell, you copy it for each time you pay its Replicate cost, and you may choose new targets for it. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature and opponent controls. So you get something really big there. Like, if you've got Raphael out and you've got a +1/+1 on whatever you have that's going to be targeting your opponent's stuff, you can just replicate this, and it's just like, yeah, it's not just dealing the damage that it has, it's doubling that based off of what Raphael says. So yeah, again, very fitting that Raphael is the one in this card, because you want to mostly use it with it. Like, you could definitely use it with something else, but it's definitely going to be effective with him. So it looks like we're going to have a split card here. We're going to have Double Jump and Flying Kick. Double Jump is going to be 1 and a blue. For an instant, you put a flying counter on target creature you control until end of turn. Its base power and toughness is 5/5. You're putting a counter on something there. Raphael does not care if it's a +1/+1. It's dealing double damage. Flying Kick, 1 and a red. With an instant, target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature and opponent controls, and it has fuse, so you can use only 1, you can use both. Again, if you've got Raphael out there, you're putting a flying counter on that creature. It becomes a 5/5 base power. So if you don't have any other things and then you use Flying Kick, you're dealing 10 damage to a creature. Yeah. Now, this doesn't have Raphael on it. It does have Michelangelo, but it's certainly a good Raphael card, because it provides the token for you. Arcade Cabinet, 3 mana for an artifact. When this ETBs, you put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 4 target creatures. Okay. Pay 2 and tap, sack a token, double the number of counters on target creature. Very, very nice. Yeah. That's going to be really good, again, in any deck that focuses on +1/+1 counters there. If you've got a way to get tokens out there like food, treasure, clues, anything of those sorts, even if it's just a creature token there, sacking it to double the number of +1/+1s on something can be pretty good there. Additionally, you could also use this to double the number of -1/-1 counters on something, so you could essentially use this as a removal effect there as well. That's something. Big Mother Mouser, 4 mana for an 0/0 artifact creature robot. It enters with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. When this attacks, double the number of +1/+1 counters on it. Okay. When this dies, create a number of 1/1 colorless robot artifact creature tokens equal to the number of +1/+1 counters on this creature. Okay, so you get it in. It starts as a 2. You attack. It doubles up to 4. You know, if you've got other ways of doing things there, you could probably get it. I mean, doubling it with Arcade Cabinet as well, getting a bunch of tokens afterwards that if you then have Leonardo out and you're going to be putting a whole bunch of +1/+1s on everything you control. Because when this dies, then Leonardo would activate when the tokens come in. They all, you know, they're 1/1s, but then they all get a +1/+1 token on it. Okay. Coin of Mastery, 4 mana for an artifact. Each creature you control enters with an additional +1/+1 on it for each mana from an artifact source spent to cast it. And you can tap this to create a treasure token. Okay. You know, that certainly helps it there. You know, creating a treasure token counts as the artifact source there. Potentially, you know, just having things enter with at least 1/1/1 on it seems pretty nice. I mean, Arcane Signet, Soul Ring, a lot of other things that you could potentially use. It kind of fuels itself a little bit. So, again, I don't think it's necessarily the fastest thing, but I do think that it could work. I mean, what is it? With Urza Lord High Artificer, the mono blue one where you can tap artifacts to produce blue mana. I mean, I don't know how much it would want this, but I mean, that seems like a very perfect case of something that you could potentially put this into where it's just, hey, yeah, you know, like, and, you know, this itself could be used as mana instead of creating the treasure token, you know, in any way, but, you know, creating a bunch of mana to make your things big. But I don't exactly know how much Urza would rely on casting creatures per se. Exploding Barrel, 3 mana for an artifact with tap to add 1 mana of any color, and you put a pressure counter on this. You can pay 8 and tap this to sack the artifact. It deals 20 damage to target creature. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each pressure counter on this artifact. Activate only as a sorcery. Well, the Exploding Barrel is kind of like a constant that you see in video games there. Yeah, I mean, you can use it as a mana rock, and then when you need to use it as creature removal there, dealing 20 damage to something is probably going to get rid of most things. So, hey, you know, why not use it for that? Potentially having it for free towards after you've used it a bit. Okay. Mole Module, 5 mana for a 6/6 artifact vehicle with Crew 2 and Menace. Whenever this vehicle deals combat damage to a player, you mill 4 cards, and you may put a permanent from among them onto the battlefield. Yikes. Oh, boy. That's pretty intense there. There's a lot of mill decks and reanimator decks that would certainly like this. I mean, if you are doing something like Aminato, where you can manipulate the top of your deck consistently, yeah, that could be pretty intense. I mean, even something like Sylvan Library, where you're seeing, you know, additional cards off the top of your deck to be like, you know, is it worth it to potentially do this? Like, do I have a permanent that's worth putting out, or do I have too good of things, or what have you? Probably really good there with Sensei's Divining Top. I mean, the drill even looks like the Sensei's Divining Top, kind of. So that you could be like, yeah, you know, like it looks like there's something worthwhile to do, and then try to get through it there. Okay, yeah. Roadkill Rodney, 2 mana for a 2/1 artifact creature robot with squad 3. You can create any number of counter tokens of it if you pay 3 extra. It's got Death Touch, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you create a mutagen token. So, you know, if they don't want their thing to die because of the Death Touch, then they let it through, you get a mutagen token. Okay, yeah. Getting into some lands. Big Apple at 3 a.m. Looks like we just got a bunch of graffiti on the walls in some back alley. This land enters tapped. As it enters, you choose a color. You can tap it to add 1 mana of the chosen color. And you can pay 5 and tap it to create a 1/1 black rat creature token for each opponent you have. So pay 5 to essentially get 3 tokens almost. It's an interesting one. Feels a bit better than the Thriving lands that we got in the Elemental deck. Just because, you can choose the colors that you need to use for this, kind of similar to them, but this has an additional effect to it other than just tapping for those specific colors, which I'm just not super fond of. Hidden Hideout, land that also enter taps. You can tap to add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity, so a tapped command tower, and pay 2 and tap. Target creature you control with a counter on it gains lifelink until end of turn, so potentially being able to just gain a little bit of life back with this isn't the worst thing ever. Certainly will take that. Together Forever, double white for an enchantment with when this ETBs, you support 2, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures, and you can pay 1 to choose target creature with a counter on it. Whenever that creature dies this turn, return it to its owner's hand. Ooh, oh boy. Just for 1 mana with things that have counters on them. Yeah, and in certain strategies, that means that things will just never die. Yeah, that's a bit of a yikes. Oof. Get away, try to get around it with, exiling them. But, if you can't exile them, it's like, return it to the hand. Well, you're already going to do that anyway for 1 mana. So it's like, exile it or put it into their deck. Okay, new artwork, but we're starting to get some of older cards here. So I guess we must have gone through most of our new stuff. Vanquish the Horde, 6 and double white for a sorcery. It deals 1 damage. It costs 1 less to cast for each creature on the battlefield and destroys all creatures. So there is a Blasphemous Act that I saw later on in this year. So, essentially 2 mana to destroy all creatures there. Kind of similar to the other one that we had earlier on that, trying to wipe the board. Where was it? Game Over. Yeah, so it's going to be kind of similar to Game Over, except Game Over only goes down to 3, but only a few, are half your starting life total. Wave Goodbye, 2 and double blue for a sorcery. Return each creature without a +1/+1 counter on it to its owner's hand. Again, very good in any deck that is using +1/+1 counters on it. It essentially would be a one-sided board wipe, and people don't like it when things go back to their hand. So not quite as oppressive as something like Cyclonic Rift because it hits all non-land permanents. So artifacts and enchantments, planeswalkers, battles, anything like that goes back to hands there, where as this it's just only creatures, but still it can be a little bit oppressive. Here we are with our Blasphemous Act, which is going to have the Shredder on it there, 8 in a red for a sorcery. It costs 1 less to cast for each creature on the battlefield, does 13 damage to each creature there. Pretty classic board wipe from original Innistrad block. Biogenic Ooze, 3 and double green for a 2/2 ooze. With when it ETBs, you create a 2/2 green ooze creature token. Beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each ooze you control, and you can pay 1 and 3 green to create another 2/2 green ooze creature token. Not that bad. You get some oozes out there getting I think that this is decent because a lot of these deal with either, having +1/+1s go onto things and it triggers, or, creating tokens and it triggers things. So, I feel like it goes very well with this. We're also going to get a Slash Clone, which is going to be a version of Steelbane Hydra, X and double green for a 0/0 Turtle Hydra. This creature ETBs with X +1/+1 counters on it, and you can pay 2 and a green to remove a +1/+1 counter from it to destroy target artifact or enchantment. So potentially get a few counters on it there, and paying a few mana to destroy an artifact or enchantment there. You get something like Leonardo or any of these other ones, and you could potentially be putting more and more on this. You could be doubling the counters on it with the arcade machine, and just essentially getting the ability to be able to remove more counters on it, so this won't die, but you can still destroy artifacts and enchantments. So good there. We haven't seen any graveyard hate from this yet. That is probably the only thing that I'm seeing that we're missing so far. We're also going to have Heralds of the Shredder, which is going to be a copy of Vigor. Very nice. 3 and triple green for a 6/6. Elemental Incarnation with Trample. If damage would be dealt to another creature you control, prevent that damage. Put a +1/+1 counter on that creature for each 1 damage prevented this way. When this is put into a graveyard from anywhere, shuffle it into its owner's library. So, big thing with this is you had something like Blasphemous Act, where you're dealing 13 damage to something. Oh, well, we're just going to prevent that damage instead, and everything that I control gets +13/+13. Oof. Or the electric seaweed here, where you deal the 1 damage to something. So then if something dies, it deals another damage. So potentially dealing a lot of damage across the board. And then you get Vigor out, and it's like, oh, well, all of my stuff, it's just prevented, and I get +1/+1s instead. Yeah, Vigor, if you don't have removal that exiles it, it's a pain. It's a big, big pain. Because, you just have an effect that destroys it. It's going to get shuffled back in. Potentially, it coming back out is not helpful. We're also going to have a little bit of aggro amalgam, a Voracious Hydra, X and double green for a 0/1 Hydra with Trample. Enters with X +1/+1 counters on it, and when it ETBs, you choose one. You either double the number of +1/+1 counters on this creature, or it fights target creature you don't control. So you can use it as a removal spell, or you can just make it even bigger. Okay, yeah. A little bit of removal here in Assassin's Trophy. Black and green instant. Destroy target creature an opponent controls. They search for a basic land, put it on the battlefield, and then shuffle. Yep, nice little removal there. Humongous Fungus, a Corpse Jack Menace. Yeah, with all of the +1/+1s in this, that's going to be helpful. 2, a black and a green for a 4/4 fungus that if you 1 or more +1/+1s would be put on a creature you control, twice that many are put on it instead. Yes. We definitely want this. This is a threat and a half for +1/+1 decks. Chromatic Lantern. Again, I know some people don't necessarily enjoy this, but for a deck with 4 or 5 colors, which this one does, it mana fixes you. 3 mana. All lands you control have tap to add 1 mana of any color, and this is just a Mana Rock itself, which taps to add 1 mana of any color. I really like it there. Talking about some sort of Time Scepter there. I like the artwork of this one here. It's very, very colorful, very beautiful. Yes, Ravnica is my favorite plane, so I've got a fondness for the original printing of Chromatic Lantern, but this is still a beautiful rendition of it. And honestly, you do see some of the turtle stuff here, and if you recognize that, sure. But I could see this being a not Universes Beyond artwork of this as well. It looks really nice. Cinderglade, Forest and Mountain. Let's see here, unless you control 2 or more. So this is a slow land there. We're probably going to get a lot of these lands that tap for multiple colors there. We'll have a few basic lands, but most of them are going to tap for multiple things. City of Brass becomes tapped, deals 1 damage to you, but you can make 1 of any color there. It's nice. Dragon Skull Summit, you get black and red. Exotic Orchard, 1 mana of a land an opponent can control. So, something that you need. Fabled Passage to help you be able to get a basic land. If you've got 4 or more, that land, and you then untap it. Grand Coliseum, I'm not familiar with this one. The center's tapped. You can tap it to add 1 colorless, or you can tap it to add 1 mana of any color. It deals 1 damage to you. So it's basically another City of Brass, okay. Hinterland Harbor, green and a blue land. Rain Slicked Copse, green and a blue land. Rootbound Crag, red and a green land. Smoldering Marsh, black and red. Sodden Verdure, blue and green. We haven't seen any like white, like dual lands here. Spire Garden, green and red land. Sunken Hollow, blue and black land. Undergrowth Stadium, black and green land. Vernal Fen, black and green land. Yep, still, there was no white lands in there. I wonder if there's just not, because there's not a whole lot of white cards in this. Just had to pick that one up. It fell on the floor. Lita, Little Orphan Amphibian, 1 and a white for a 2/1 legendary mutant ninja turtle. They look like they're albino. Alliance, whenever another creature you control ETBs, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn, put a +1/+1 on Lita, create a food token, or scry 1. So you can get all of those if you get 3 creatures that enter this turn. That's not too bad there. I mean, being able to get all 3 effects there, decently easy. I mean, this is the first one that's in the main set there. This is not a commander-only card. Mona Lisa, Science Geek, 2 and a green, 1/3 legendary lizard mutant with reach. Tap, add X mana of any one color where X is their power. Very good if you're putting a lot of +1/+1 counters on this. They're getting a lot of extra mana. Lessons from Life, 2, a green and a blue. Sorcery, draw 3 cards. You may put a land card from your hand on the battlefield tapped. And they are playing Magic the Gathering here, so that's very interesting. I don't recognize this yellow bandana turtle there. I mean, I didn't recognize this Lita either. So maybe this yellow bandana one will show up here. But hey, you know, they're referencing the Magic the Gathering in the card. So it's Magicception, I guess. But yeah, you know, draw 3. Oh, this is the one I've heard people say that this is just the better version of Urban Evolution there, because Urban Evolution is you pay, is it 5? It might be 3, a green and a blue for a sorcery that you draw 2 cards and you can play an additional land on your turn, but this just puts the land onto the battlefield. So yeah, I mean, it puts it onto the battlefield tapped, where if it was an untapped land, you know, you could play it untapped. But still, like, I can see why people say, like, it's better. You can play it a turn earlier. You draw 3 cards for 4 mana. That's a pretty good rate. That's a pretty darn good rate. So I can see why they say that. Everything Pizza, 2 mana for an artifact food. When it ETBs, search your library for a basic land, reveal it, put it in your hand, and shuffle. So searches for any basic, helps fixes. 2 and 1 of each color to tap this to sack the artifact. Target player gains 3 life, draws a card. Each of your opponents discards a card. This deals 3 damage to any target, and you put 3 +1/+1 counters on up to 1 target creature. Now, it costs a whole lot to get that effect, but it does a lot of things. You know, it's essentially, doing something for each of the mana, and then it's just cost 2 extra. So, yeah, I can see why they would consider an Everything Pizza. It does one of everything, potentially. Oh, Escape Tunnel, yeah. Land, sack it, tap and sack, search your library for a basic land, or you can tap and sack it there. Target creature with power 2 or less can't be blocked this turn. Yep, you know, nice little one there. Turtle Air, tap to add colorless, tap to add 1 mana of any color, spend it only to cast a ninja or a turtle. 3 and tap, target ninja or turtle can't be blocked this turn. Again, potentially could be good in Yuriko there, but, you know, there are other ways to get that unblockable effects for your ninjas, so maybe not the most impactful, but it is potential. Marauding Mutagen, which is just going to be an acidic slime, so Death Touch, and when an ETB is destroy target artifact, enchantment, or land, so a little bit of removal there. Cultivate for a little bit of mana ramp. Harmonize to draw 3 extra cards. The Arcane Signet for your getting your mana. Soul Ring, again, more mana there. Ash Barrens, basic land cycling, get whatever land that you need or tap it for colorless. Command Tower, you couldn't have a commander deck without Command Tower. you could, but, it just makes it better. It's a free, untapped land that taps for 1 of anything. Evolving Wilds, get your preferred basic land. Path of Ancestry, taps for any color in your commander's color identity. If they share a creature type and you cast a creature with this, you get to scry 1. And we're getting the Thrivings again. So nice to get the artworks. It'll be nice to have them there, but these are going to be ones that I take out right away there. And it is looking like blue, green, and black are kind of kind of our main colors there, with red kind of being a little bit maybe more in it than white is, because we did get a lot of lands that also tapped for red, but not a whole lot for white. Vibrant Cityscape, tap to sack this land, search for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped. Okay, and here we are: plains, island, swamp, mountain, forest. Twice of those, and then a few extra forests there. Okay, yeah, and then foods, got a bunch of snacks there. Ninja for the Foot Clan. Rat, just trying to be a ninja rat, but it's not actually a ninja. Clue, a little bit of a shuriken left behind. An ooze there. Looks like it definitely goes along with that biogenic ooze that is in this one. Treasure is going to be tickets from the game corner. Robot, yep, goes in with that Mother Mouser that was there. Copy, having all of these there so you can become your own version of the Ninja Turtles. The mutagen there, the thing that created the turtles in the first place, that gave Daredevil his powers as well. Getting a few of those, multiple copies of everything there. So yeah, so it's a deck that is 5 colors that deals mostly with creating tokens and generating +1/+1 counters and trying to get benefits off of those. And because the mutagen tokens create +1/+1 counters, the tokens go into the counter strategy. So it makes kind of sense. It's, building off of it there. It's trying to bring it all back together. All in all, I think it's a decent deck. It's not my favorite one there, just I think mostly because I'm not as big of a fan of 5-color decks, and I probably would have wanted it to do a little bit more as a 5-color deck, but I think it's decent as it is. Mostly I think that some of the new cards that are in it are very powerful, and I think would be very impactful in other decks there. So, potential of keeping one as is if you wanted a precon, and then splitting up other ones to get the individual cards to be able to cannibalize and put into the different places that you want to. But all in all, not terrible, just not my personal favorite, and I don't know enough about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to really go into different things, so kind of a little bit glad that there was only one deck because of that, just since I don't know quite as much about the Ninja Turtles. I don't have to be like, yes, this thing that I really don't know the reference to. But yeah, I will certainly take it. I'm glad that I got it, and I'm glad that I got extras for all of the cards in it that are good that I can cannibalize, as I said. So thanks for going with me on this little review and taking a peek at what this deck has to offer. Hopefully, you'll be able to enjoy it yourself if you're able to get it, or some of the new cards that are in it. Thanks for joining me on this one here. Have a good afternoon, good evening, or good night. Aloha, cowabunga. We are hitting the big time there. Big Apple deals. All of that stuff. We've come back to New York City a second time here after Spider-Man, and we're going to be going back again for a little bit of Avengers in the summertime. So I'll see you that time. Take care.